Hello, everyone. Welcome into Guerilla Hockey with JJ and Jesse. I'm JJ. He's Jesse. Welcome back, Jess.
Thanks. Oh yeah, I wasn't on last week.
Yeah.
I've been back I've been here all week, so I forgot that last week I wasn't. Thank you for welcoming me back.
Absolutely. It's been a wild season, right? Here we are. This is basically the last full week of the season. We'll have one more regular season podcast before we dive into the playoffs, and excited for that as usual. But looking back, how has the season been for you? For me, it's been kind of an easier season than years past, mainly because of the scheduling. It's been so crazy how, they'll hit the road for 10 days at a time, and then they'll come back for a game or two, and then hit the road for a week. And
what you're describing is why this has been like one of the most strenuous seasons that I've ever covered. And I was actually talking with someone with the Avs who travels to every game, and they were saying that the schedule this year, I don't ever remember it being quite. They always have long road trips, but it's usually like, oh man, they got the five gamer coming up. There have been 3 5-game road trips this season, a 6-game, and then I think 3 4-game trips. Like, with the exception of Vegas, which you and I are heading to on Sunday.
Can't wait.
Their last 4 road trips were all 3 games or more. And the one that was the 3-game had 2 days off in between a couple of the games. This has just been, I don't ever remember, whether it be covering or just being, watching the team, I don't ever remember a season like this where they had so many long stretches away from home.
Yeah, and for me personally, usually at this point in time, I'm like, oh, let's just get to the playoffs already. Mm-hmm. But I don't feel that. I don't feel that like worn down burnout that I usually do.
See, I'm at that point with the not going to the rink, but the games, like, and isn't it fucking hilarious that it looks like it's going to come right down to the bitter end to decide something, that last game against Edmonton is probably going to mean something. And I want to circle back to that in a second, because I always find it funny how stuff like that works out.
We'll circle back to it. Don't worry.
Right. But like there have just been so many of these games. Like, dude, I was talking with this person with the Avs, and I said, we've had fewer than 10 games to go for 2 months. Like, it just feels like this regular season won't wrap up. Like, we hit game 72, and it was like, all right, here we go, the home stretch. And that was in like 2022. You know what I mean? And we're still playing out the home stretch. These seasons just become so interesting when you're a team like the Avs. Like, they've been, despite what you would think if you went and just read Twitter throughout the regular season, they have been comfortably in a playoff spot all season. They have been in contention for the Central Division all season. You looking at Blake got me to look at Blake, and now he ruined the pod. You ruined it. You ruined the show.
Usually I always get you to look over there just because I stare off there in space, but this time somebody was actually there.
We have our producers sit right on the other side of this window, and JJ just, and he always gets me. But
I have jumpy eyes. Jumpy eyes.
But like you and I have talked about on the show, like over the course of 82 games, you're just going to have games. It's like, yeah, write it off, throw it away. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, especially in the last month, there have been a lot of those, both that the Avs have won and that they've lost, just because the league is separated out a bit, especially in the West, playoff teams, non-playoff teams. And I've just like, it's like, all right, let's get through those. I am grateful. I'm excited that we got Winnipeg tomorrow. That'll be a huge one. Like I mentioned, you and I are going to Vegas. That should be a fun one. Vegas very suddenly is playing for their lives here. St. Louis has had a late push. So, that should be a good game. And then, like I said, it's right now looking like that game against Edmonton is going to mean something potentially for both teams. So I'm grateful that we're down to the last 3 games and they all mean something. They all have something to look forward to about them. And 2 of them are afternoon games. Yeah. Whoop, whoop. Hey.
Get it out of your system, because once the playoffs hit, they're going to be hitting us with the 8:30 starts.
Dude. Yeah, we'll keep going. Maybe not if they get Winnipeg, though, because Winnipeg's a central time zone team, I believe.
But the home games will be.
Yes, but again, I'm hoping that it's central time zone for the other team, and it's a Canadian team. every year I hope like, well, maybe they'll give the Avs this for all these other reasons, and they never do.
I appreciate the optimism. I'll jump on that ship with you. Let's be optimistic.
Because I mean, truthfully though, an 8:30 Denver puck drop, that's 9:30 for Winnipeg Jets fans that live in Winnipeg. I get it. Every time I bring up start times, people from Europe that are big Avs fans, people that live on the East Coast that are big, I get it. I'm with you. It's late. It's tough for you to watch games. You're an amazing fan. The Avs play 8 minutes from here. Being in the city that the team is playing in, the team should not be playing that late.
I agree.
Like that's the part that always spins me out. I get there are people that exist in other time zones that have interest in watching games. You don't live in the time zone that the game is existing in. The time zone where the game is happening should be a favorable start time.
Agreed. And you hear the players allude to it all the time, and anybody who's played hockey in an adult league has experienced this. You have a late game, and you cannot go to sleep after it. The lights, the adrenaline, everything, the plays running through your mind. So when you're a professional athlete who's so, I guess you value your recovery so importantly, i.e. Nathan MacKinnon, the sleep is so important to you. So if you can't fall asleep and then you have to be back at the rink the next day at 9 a.m., I mean, that gets rough. So
Nate had that, I think it was the summer after they won the cup. He was talking about the guy that he works with. He's, I don't necessarily even want to just call him a trainer because I think it's much more comprehensive than that. But how he's like, yeah, I go back after games and we start a recovery program. Someone was like, don't you want to go to bed? He's like, I can't even think about falling asleep till 3 a.m. anyways.
Right.
My adrenaline's through the roof, so I might as well get in a workout. Which is also just like what a sicko he is.
But I've been there. Like I've gotten home from games late night and still have the energy that like, man, maybe I should just get a workout in.
Right.
I can't because I don't want to wake up my baby or anybody else in the house. But I've been there.
I've definitely done that. Like a summer league where like you get home and it's nice out. Like I'll just go walk around the neighborhood or something. Like again, just because I can't get in this bed and lay down, and that's us playing beer league, let alone what they go through to get themselves right to compete at that level.
100x what they do.
Right.
And then they, some people tend to rely on pharmaceuticals to help them fall asleep, and that's a slippery slope too, right?
Totally,
a conversation for another day. But kind of with what you're saying.
Point being, stop the 8:30 local starts.
You're killing us. You look at the Avalanche since the trade deadline, right? And that was just such a revamped version of the team.
Yeah.
They went on a 7-0 run. They're like, oh, this is great. We figured some stuff out. Our team's way better. And then they went and through a little bit of a lull. Caused us to start yelling at each other on our podcast here.
I was thinking about that this morning. I was thinking about the version of it that actually made it to air, and it was funny.
I liked it too. And you could just kind of feel like, okay, there was a spurt of excitement with the new team. They went on a run, and then that kind of faded, and the excitement was gone. And it's like, all right, these games are just whatever. We're just circling the drain until we get to the playoffs here. So, yeah, I'm with you. I could see kind of how, I guess, just the energy maybe fell off a little bit, and it's just they're itching for playoffs at this point.
The trade deadline felt like, a shot of adrenaline of like, all right, let's go. And then I think this group kind of got, all right, this is the group. We've heard them talk about that, right? When I remember the first time hearing that kind of phrase was after the Matt Duchene trade of like, all right, we know the guys in this room, these are the guys that are going to battle. And I think you kind of had that happen at the deadline. And then I do think that this version of the team is kind of settled into that what did Jared Bednar, what was the phrase? Work in progress, he said, for a guy like Casey Middlestat. Like that, I think it was our guy Corey from the Denver Post asked, like, okay, now that the those guys coming in playing on adrenaline and instinct has worn off, how are they settling in? I think that first week, that's what you kind of tell those guys to go do. Go put the effort in. Don't worry about too much about the system stuff. Try to pay attention here and there, but go skate your tail off. And now I think we've seen the growing pains over the last couple of weeks of these guys getting fully implemented, saying, hey, Casey Middlestat, don't just go out there and, rely on your talents. And he's very, very talented.
Very.
But hey, work yourself into these systems, be in the right place. I promise we're going to put you in places to let that skill shine through, but we got to get you there first. We can't have freelancing. That's a phrase I used earlier in the season. We can't have guys freelancing. I'm really anxious for round 1, game 1. This team, with the exception of last year, which I do think there are extraordinary circumstances there, this core has a track record of round 1, game 1, and they just dial it to a different level. They've done that the entire time under the Jared Bednar era. Round 1, game 1, they are a different team. I think we're going to see that again. And I think it's going to be similar to that kind of shot of life that we were talking about coming out of the deadline.
Yeah, I think Jared Bednar he deserves a lot more credit than he gets for something
by so much.
For something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They somehow seem to dial it up in the playoffs. Or for instance, the other day they were losing. They had lost a game. Jared Bednar comes out and says, "Oh, I'm confident we're going to play better in the next game. I know exactly what we need to do. We went over a lot of the things that we need to do." And then what do? They come out and stomp the Minnesota Wild again. And I think Jared Bednar's grasp on his own team is so great.
Yeah.
That his ability to just be like, "Hey, this is all you got to tweak, and we'll figure it out." This and which makes sense that he comes into that room sometimes really disappointed because to him it's like, guys, we've talked about this.
We know, yeah.
We've been over this. You know exactly what to do. So once he has that little bit of window to prepare for the playoffs, you know that they're going to be that prepared.
Well, I was actually talking about it with D-Mac the other day. Like, Jared's getting into playoff mode a little early. Like, it's become a running joke amongst Colorado media that morning skate of game 1.
He doesn't tell us anything.
It has become like I like to have the availability just for the sake of him doing it. But genuinely, it's almost not even worth them making him available because and last year, he even like had to look away because he almost started laughing because he knows what he's doing. It'll just go to maybe, possibly, possibly. Oh, have you been, what have you been paying attention to them? A lot of stuff, dangerous team. Like he won't give anything. And that is when Jared's in playoff mode. Here we go. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. But this has been an exciting week. There's a lot of things that have happened this week.
A lot that's happened this week.
DU heading into the final again. Congratulations to them. We can't fail to stick tap them. You got the Masters going on, which I love. I'm a big fan of golf. You got the Arizona Coyote debacle. And, of course, you got the races that are still going on in the NHL.
Yeah.
Like we've said, I don't remember a season where we've been so tight on so many different races throughout the league.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the Arizona stuff? Do you want to circle back?
Let's save that for the end.
Okay, because that might have implications on the Avs and those start times we were just talking about. Races in the NHL. Yeah. A New York Ranger win, I think, would eliminate a ton of teams from President's Trophy contention. We had that piece out last week that, there were 9 games to go. You had 8 teams that had not like an outside shot, but like a realistic shot at winning the President's Trophy. That race has shrunk a little bit. But I'm with you, dude. Like, there's multiple playoff positions in the East still up for grabs. There's a ton of seeding in the West still up for grabs. And we're going to have to watch the scoreboards tonight. Like I said earlier, Vegas has suddenly put themselves in a position that is that up for grabs? A Vegas loss.
Statistically, it's not looking good for St. Louis.
No. But here's where this is something that I learned a couple years ago with some of these playoff races that, start to, or teams that start to slide back, right? And you look at a thing and it's like, okay, they're three positions out of the playoff. And I'm making this is a hypothetical example. All right, this team X is 3 positions out of the playoffs, but they're only 5 points out. They're right there, a couple quick wins. It's like, yes, but when you're in a situation where you're having to climb over other teams, it's like, yes, suddenly you need a bunch of teams to lose. You need both teams ahead of you to lose and one of the teams sitting in a playoff spot to lose more than you are winning, or lose more than you are winning. What's interesting about St. Louis's spot is like you're chasing down Vegas. There's no one coming behind you. There's no one to climb over you. You got one team that you're trying to catch. And for Vegas, yeah, you don't have you're not having to scoreboard watch all these different teams, but like if Vegas loses tonight and St. Louis wins, you're 1 point. 1 point different. And I just, at that point, all bets are off. But I'm with you. A Vegas win tonight, I mean, makes it near impossible. Mm-hmm. Near impossible. I actually think if Vegas wins and St. Louis loses, it's done. It's officially done. But this can get really interesting, even if briefly in the West. Otherwise, everything else as far as who's in is pretty much sewn up.
Vegas not exactly playing the best hockey right now, but if you're Dallas, do you want to see Vegas in the first round?
Well, and I think that's the thing right now that makes them such a weird team. They haven't been good this year. Like Vegas has been. Avs fans talk about the Avs being up and down. Vegas has been crazy hot and cold. Mm-hmm. I saw Henrik Lundqvist, who I think is one of the best goalies of all time, unbelievable personality. He ranked the Western Conference goalies the other day, and he had Stuart Skinner ahead of Jake Ottinger, and he had Logan Thompson and Aiden Hill ahead of Alexander Georgiev. It was just a weird list, and I was like, hey, maybe this is truly my sign that I know nothing about goaltending. But I don't know. Their goaltending has been the reason I was saying, like, their goaltending has been all year. Mm-hmm. Really inconsistent up front. You don't really know what Mark Stone's situation is. I'm sure he'll be ready to go on morning skate of game one. That liver will heal up right away. They added Tomas Hertl. He's going through some growing pains of getting to know the team. Like, the other thing I don't get, we talked at the trade deadline this season about how much respect I've got for the way that Vegas says, hey, if we're a team, we're going for it. I don't get where they make the money up from. They just gave Noah Hannafin an 8-year extension. I don't get it. Every year they acquire guys and give them 8-year extensions. I'm like, what? How does this keep happening? I just don't get it. They've got Eichel, Stone, Hannafin, Hertl.
You might never get it because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Pietrangelo, all guys that they acquired and now have on long-term deals. I just don't get it.
So let's look at the Avs Central hopes. They're all but mathematically gone, I would say.
Yeah, Dallas would have to lose out, which...
Well, and again, I don't know if you had the chance to listen to last week's podcast, but I pointed out the opponents that Dallas had down this stretch here, and they've got it pretty easy.
The Avs have the toughest schedule of the remaining of the three at the top of the Central.
Exactly.
Sure.
So that being said, if the Avalanche don't end up pulling the Central Division win, how do you look back at the year? What does this year feel like to you? Because to me, I personally feel like this has been a super successful season.
I agree.
There's a lot of great things that have happened, despite maybe not running away with the Central, maybe not being in the running for the President's Trophy here late.
I think it's a great example of it. I'm not saying you, but like you said, when I look at this season, I think it's been super successful, but I think the public perception is, come on! You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that, it's still very fresh when they won the Cup. And that was maybe the most dominant Avalanche season that we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. Even the 0-1 team wasn't quite to that level, especially in the playoffs. That was an all-time playoff run, for the NHL, not just for the Avs. So I think there's a little bit of that spoiled fan base mentality of we'll just win every game by 4. You did that a couple of years ago, and look how well it went. And then I do also think that it's a product of, it's easy to forget that there's 2 teams out there. And in this case, the Winnipeg Jets have had a massive resurgence. It looked like they were selling off 9 months ago. Probably Connor Hellebuyck gone. Probably Mark Scheifele gone. Blake Wheeler was already gone. And then how else are they gonna keep Kyle Connor? And now suddenly here they are, about to potentially finish second in the Central.
Don't forget, right before the trade deadline, I said if the playoffs started today, I'm picking Winnipeg and the Panthers. I think my opinion has changed since then. Winnipeg has kind of slid a little bit since that date, but there was a second where we were all saying Winnipeg's winning the Central.
Well, dude, I mean, they're big, they've got skilled players, and you've got Connor Hellebuck. That's kind of the great equalizer. If you're talking about the Avs and the Jets like head-to-head, I think excluding the crease, I think the Avs have the better roster by quite a bit, depth and high-end talent. But you add in Connor Hellebuck, and I'm like, I don't know. This can kind of go either way. Point being, the Jets have had a major bounce-back year, and everyone knew the Dallas Stars were going to have a good season. The Avs are a 100-plus point team again. They've had I'm with you, dude. Like, they've had a very good year. All under the guise of no Gabe Landeskog. For the second year in a row, one of your best players, one of the best players in your team, in my opinion, the best captain in the league, and one of the best wingers in the NHL, 0 games played. To have done what they've done with as important as Gabe Landeskog is, and they've kind of had to like redefine their leadership group in there, I think this has been an unbelievably successful regular season. I do think with that, it's been a good enough regular season. The expectation is Western Conference Final or better for me.
Yep. I'm with that. It has to go deep or else it was all for nothing. But you look back at how they were kind of stuck in the mud for a second, right? With Ryan Johansson, Tomas Tatar, and they just kind of were frustrated, but still achieving what they needed to achieve for the most part. So once they kind of got rid of the problems, they're feeling a lot better. So I would be curious what this group would have done over an 82-game season, because they really only had the last third of the season to put things together.
Well, and look, again, I want to repeat this before I say what I'm about to say. Not only do I think this team can win the Stanley Cup, I think on paper, I think this team should be in the Stanley Cup final and should make a significant run in a Stanley Cup this year, right now, this upcoming May, June. That being said, for what you just said, I'm really excited for next year. I think that's one of the big wins of this season is they have laid some really nice foundational groundwork to keep this team in a championship window. Go back to December, you were looking at the construction of that roster, and you're like, obviously the core is still here, but damn, it's going to take some tweaking to keep this team at like an elite level. They did that. They did that in season. We'll have to see what happens with Sean Walker. Casey Middlestad's coming back. He's an RFA. You've solved your issue down the middle. I think Sam Malinsky has been a major revelation this year, that if Sean Walker isn't back next year, you feel really good about what you can plug in right there. Or if it's Sean Walker, you had to move out another piece, whatever. Like, I think there's been some really nice foundational parts of what this team has done this year that should frankly have the rest of the league like, oh boy, they found another one in Sam Malinsky. They added they not only solved that Ryan Johansson problem, they probably solved it for the next decade. And you've seen the progress from Gabe Landeskog, and you've seen Nathan MacKinnon take it to another level this year, having to be the emotional leader. He hasn't had the Gabe Landeskog buffer, and look what he's done. Jared Bednar told us the other night, it can be off-putting at times to other guys, but this is the way that Nathan MacKinnon leads, and look what he's doing, and look how the team's following him.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how Casey Middlestat kind of develops underneath Nathan MacKinnon, right? Because both guys have a lot of skill. Casey Middlestat strikes me as a guy over the last few years hasn't exactly put in the most work because maybe he hasn't been so invigorated being where he was, right? He didn't like it there. He didn't like the team. But now being not only with a winning team, but under a guy like Nathan MacKinnon, who you can really start to learn some stuff from, I wonder how that tweaks his game and what kind of player he develops into these next couple years.
I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher this story. I don't remember who it was. That it may have actually been Corey that asked Casey Middlestat about this, but I believe it was Marty Biron on NHL Network was talking about, he's a Buffalo Sabres guy, he's on their broadcast, and he was talking about Casey Middlestat. Right. I think it was on deadline day or maybe the day after. And he was saying, Casey's now going to go to that first Avs practice, and he's going to get in line to run a drill, and who's going to run the drill in front of him.
Can you say it in Marty Biron's accent?
No.
That's what makes him so great, doesn't it?
I can't do that without going off on our running joke, and I don't want to do that here on the pod.
Okay.
But he said, Casey Middlestat's going to get in line to run a drill, and Nathan MacKinnon's going to go ahead of him. And Casey Middlestat's going to have to follow that. You don't think that that's going to make him dig in a little bit harder? And I believe it was Corey from the Denver Post asked Casey Middlestat about that, and he said that was the first thing that crossed my mind when I heard it was Colorado was, I got to go after Nate. All right, and I'm with you. I think the change of environment, I'm really excited to see what he does. I think he's ultra skilled. I think he's perfect for that spot. Let Nathan MacKinnon eat up the top pairing matchups and just let Casey Middlestat feast on second pairing, third pairing guys, middle six forwards, because he is so much more talented than that type of player. And then, especially if you ever get Gabe Landeskog back, his wingers are going to be so much better than anything he's ever played with. They already are, but it would even just be on another level.
And not only that, you have a whole nother layer of leadership or showing, we hear it out of Boston all the time, how Patrice Bergeron, and all the leadership there really showed young guys how to be a true pro. I'd love to start hearing those stories out of the Avalanche, especially with guys like Middlestat, learning from a MacKinnon, learning from a Makar.
And maybe honestly, even like we should try to talk to Bowen Byram about something like that. You know what I mean? Like someone who was a young guy here and is now taking that elsewhere. And that was one of the first things that people started talking about when he got to Buffalo was like, you can tell this guy just comes from a different
planet.
Of expectations. But and then the name that we haven't mentioned, and it's because it's the one with the most uncertainty about whether he'll be back, is Jonathan Drouin. Jonathan Drouin is back with the Avs next year. That looks like an 80-point player suddenly.
It would be a huge failure if he's not back. I know it's tough, and there's some numbers that need to shake out, but he wants to be here. They want him here. He's got to be here.
I agree. The only thing that I think, and I do wonder if it'll be kind of like the Val Nichushkin thing where it's like he understands the value of not just being in Colorado and winning, but of being in this culture and being around these people. I'm with you. I do wonder if he'd be willing to take a little bit less. Maybe they give him an extra year or two. I don't know. But the way that Jonathan Drouin has played this year, I don't doubt that there's going to be some GM out there, maybe Salt Lake, looking to make a splash. It's going to give him a 7x7 or something, ridiculous, which, this is probably his last long-term deal. If the money is, look at Philip Grubauer. If he gets a situation like that where it's just like, or Nazem Kadri they weren't going to pay that. They weren't going to give you 8x8 or whatever. But I'm with you, dude. I think a 5x5.5.
Yeah, I think
without looking at how the cap shakes out fully.
I'm feeling confident that the fit was so right for both sides that they're going to figure it out. Jonathan Drouin really values his happiness, his peace of mind, and I think he got that here in Colorado, and I think he would sacrifice some dough
and
stay there.
He's gotten that big contract. He's made over $30 million in his career, so it's not like he's,
Right. He's not washing windshields on San Jose.
Right. But, it's also one of these things that I'm a firm believer in. These guys, get paid. You have a limited window to do this. And if I look at Nazem Kadri, it would have been awesome if he would have taken the team-friendly deal to return to the Avs. Calgary offered him $8 million a year across 7 years. The Avs just weren't going to touch that. He had his ring. That's the other thing that I do think factors in is if the Avs go on and win, I don't think Drouin is back because he got his ring. Now it's like, cool, I'll just enjoy one last contract, and then me, my son, and my wife will just enjoy life as a Stanley Cup champion forever.
With a couple extra mil, right?
Yep.
Makes sense to me. Last thing, as we get into last thing I wanted to get into about the divisions and everything like that. Right now, the Avalanche don't have home ice. Obviously, that's what I think they're playing for here for the last couple games of the season. They're tied with Winnipeg currently, losing out on the tiebreaker.
What is that first tiebreaker? I didn't look. Is it head-to-head?
I always thought it was regulation wins. Regulation or overtime
Is the first tiebreaker?
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't, because I know they changed it a couple years ago.
Well, now I'm questioning if that's even true.
Well, I'll check while you're talking.
Okay. Well, I was kind of done talking. I guess your thoughts on the home ice. How much do you value that? I mean, I think looking at this team and what they've done over the regular season, there's a little bit more of an emphasis placed on wanting that home ice. But we know historically, home ice doesn't typically mean that much.
So, excuse me, for what you're saying, like, I don't think it means a whole lot. I very, very openly, selfishly want them to have home ice, at least in this first round. Not that I don't want to be in Winnipeg. Winnipeg is very, very, very difficult to get to. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Every time I go there, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to go down that road.
We already pissed off St. Louis by my comments.
I know.
I know we have listeners in Winnipeg. I don't know if we have any in St. Louis. So,
and that's my thing. When I got to Winnipeg, I was like, this is not as bad as people make it sound. That main stretch of downtown there where the arena's on, we were there around Christmas. It was actually really cool. It was all lit up with Christmas lights. There's a lot of activity, a lot of restaurants. I didn't mind Winnipeg, the city. What I did mind was having to fly to Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and then driving. That I didn't like. Get a real airport. That being said, you want home ice. You want Game 7, not even in your building, in your own bed. You want to be able to prepare for that the way you're most comfortable. That being said, this is the year. I thought it was going to be on the cup run. The demon that they have to slay now is Game 7. Nathan MacKinnon has never won a Game 7. That does not mean anything for his legacy or the type of player he is, but I know that's something that probably bothers him.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in 4, maybe even 5. When you go on losing, you go home, and they've lost every single time. So I don't know, and a lot of those have been at home. So maybe it is. Maybe it's time to go out on the road. I just think that especially for that first round where you're trying to get your footing under you, you want to start at home, and then you want to only have to make 2 trips on the road. 1 for games 3 and 4, and worst case, 1 for game 6. The other thing, this organization loves to wrap up series on the road. So maybe that also goes back to your point of maybe it's just better to be on the road. They haven't won a series at home since the mid-2000s.
Interesting thought. Yeah, here's where my crazy brain starts.
Regulation wins, and overtime wins, total wins, and then head-to-head.
Okay. So I was close.
I would even say you had it correct.
Oh, thank you. It's not often I hear that. But so my head and my selfish thought, I guess, and kind of my own little theory here as far as home ice versus not home ice. I remember the 2022 run.
Yep.
And let me ask you something, Jesse.
Yep.
Ball Arena on a Tuesday night.
Yep.
How lit is it, as the kids would say, versus, let's say, a Friday, Saturday night?
I think it depends on what time of year you're talking about.
I think no matter what time of the year, a Friday, Saturday night at Ball Arena is going to be a lot more hype than a Tuesday. So, and that's what I remember from the 2022 run. Having home ice means a lot of your games fall on Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and then you head out on the road for Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. And in my opinion, there's just a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just rowdiness.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rowdiness within a building on a weekend game. I would love to see playoffs here on the weekends versus early in the week.
Yeah,
I don't think
it
holds much water. I don't think it. Yeah, just a small little detail that I think would really help, because people come into the Ball Arena and talk about how loud it gets and how it's a tough building to play in. Well, on a Friday and Saturday, it's even louder and tougher.
Yeah, it's a young crowd. It's a super active crowd. I'm with you. I definitely think it's positioned somewhere downtown that people want to go out and party after, or they go and pregame and then come over to the game. So I definitely think it is better atmosphere on the weekends, but I just Round 1, game 1 at Ball Arena, used to be Pepsi Center, to me is one of the best sports spectacles in Denver. Forget opening day. Like, to me, that and it was actually something that I talked to guys about last year, but just like that atmosphere. Like, it's one of the most electric sports atmospheres that I'm a part of every year, and it's one of the things that I'm most excited for every time the playoffs come back around in Colorado. Is that doesn't matter if it's a Monday, a Wednesday, let alone if it's a Friday. That
see, so it does matter.
I'm not saying it doesn't, but like, I love that first game, and then I do think you start to settle into a little bit of what you're talking about. But I think that first game, like, people leave work early, like you get downtown halfway at 1 p.m. on round 1, game 1. And there's Avs jerseys just crawling everywhere. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It is awesome. Let's get into Nate. We've talked a lot about him already, but hitting 50 goals this week for the first time in his career, I think that's obviously huge. 86 assists so far. Still 4 points behind Nikita Kucherov.
Didn't Kucherov play last night? Because I thought it was fewer than that. I thought it was 3 points.
I looked it up right before the show, and I'm spot on.
No, I know you're right on points, but I thought the last time that I had looked, it was 3 points. Did the Bolts play? Yeah, they played last night. So he picked up an assist, 2 assists. So the Bolts lost 3-2. He had points on both goals. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I just wanted you to run with it like you did.
Labelless water. He's the MVP. Like, I think it's pretty, for me, I think it's pretty cut and dry. I think there are 4 players in the league this year who have had unbelievable seasons. If I'm submitting my heart ballot today, it's MacKinnon 1, probably Kucherov 2, McDavid 3, Matthews 4. Matthews, if he hits 70 goals, it's going to be, he's already the most in the cap era. It's unbelievable. He's a couple miles behind the other 3 guys in overall production. Austin Matthews, and I'm not, he's an unbelievable 200-foot player, a great defensive player, but he's fully sacrificed on dishing the puck this year to chase the history that he's chasing on the goal-scoring side. And again, I'm not taking anything away, but to me, the other 3 players have had much more complete seasons. What Connor McDavid has done in the back half has been amazing, but he also had a really bad start to the season, and he got a coach fired over it. To me, that's not the MVP of the season. Mm-hmm. That's the MVP of the back half. And then MacKinnon is going to finish more than 50 goals and likely more than 90 assists. I don't think Kucherov's going to get to 50. So to me, Nathan MacKinnon has checked every box. He hasn't scored quite as much as Austin Matthews has, but he's right. He's next. He doesn't have he's not quite at almost 100 assists like McDavid and Kucherov, but he's going to be in the 90s. Like, he's been the most well-rounded. He has taken this Avs team and put them fully on his back and gotten them to where they are right now. And, it's a little interesting. Like, Cale Makar just became the single-season franchise point leader for a defenseman, and he's having what a lot of people would consider to be a down year. How much is Nathan MacKinnon, propping up other guys around him?
100%, and that's kind of my thought. You could kind of say the same thing about Kucherov.
Totally.
Without MacKinnon,
that's why he's my 2.
Without Kucherov, both of those teams are not even close to where they are. But which team is better? Mm-hmm. The Avalanche, hands down. Mm-hmm. And so I think for that reason alone, I think almost everything else is very equal.
I think totally.
But he put the team on his back and made them a much better team than Kucherov put the team on his back and made that team a good team.
Yeah.
Granted, they're still in the playoffs. They're in a wild card spot, which is great.
Yep.
But the Avalanche are just a little bit better.
Right. I completely. And like I said, that's why I do think I've got MacKinnon, Kucherov, McDavid, then Matthews. And they've all been unbelievably special seasons. Especially if Nate, there's 3 games to go. If he somehow pushes that to 55 goals and 90 plus assists, like, just get right out of town. Like, he's the MVP.
Dang, I just tried to pull up the odds for the Hart, and they're not available yet. All I see are the Norris and the Calder.
Really?
Yeah.
In the in your app, you mean?
In my app.
I was like, there's definitely odds.
Yeah, they're out there. Just the one I use doesn't seem to have them available, so that's a bummer. But yeah, I was about to right there on air put money on Nathan MacKinnon because I'm sold. I think for once in a long time, the national pundits are a little bit more on board with Nathan MacKinnon than they have been in years past. So,
and that's the only thing that concerns me for him is that Matthews is in the conversation, and then I guess I shouldn't also completely write off. Artemi Panarin has also had a very, very good season for the New York Rangers. He's probably, he's up there 5th, 6th, diving more into it, but it's been a really, really fun year.
Yeah.
To watch Nathan MacKinnon. Very
Last
lucky.
thing Avalanche related I wanted to get to before we get to the
Nathan MacKinnon is the heavy favorite.
What are the odds looking like?
So right now the odds are as we have laid them out. So Austin Matthews is at a plus. It's a little bit different on each book. I'll take the average for each one of these. Austin Matthews is at plus 2,400. Connor McDavid is at plus 1,100. Nikita Kucherov is at plus 450. Nathan MacKinnon minus 475.
Oh, that is not good.
He is the heavy favorite.
Well, it's good for Nathan MacKinnon and Avalanche fans. It's not good if you want to take that bet. You got to really lay something heavy if you want to even win something to speak of.
Can we talk just real briefly?
Of course.
He's the heavy odds-on favorite for the NHL MVP, and Nikola Jokic is the heavy odds-on favorite for the NBA MVP. This is really fun sports times in Denver right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only do we get to see quality teams, but we get to see arguably the best player in the world at that time. I mean, and that's something that we can't take for granted. This isn't forever. Yeah. These guys are aging, and before we know it, they'll be too old to be playing, right? And so I'm with you. This is just a time we have to really embrace and enjoy. I mean, especially if you're a Nuggets fan. The Nuggets have been garbage for so long.
Terrible.
There was a little window of greatness again when Carmelo was here, and then it went away. So to actually be experiencing this great of sports coming out of Ball Arena, it could bring a tear to some Denver sports fans' eyes.
Well, and the best part about it for me is like Nikola Jokic, draft pick. Jamal Murray, draft pick. Christian Brown, draft pick. For the Avs, Nathan MacKinnon, draft pick. Cale Makar, draft pick. Mikko Rantanen, draft pick. Gabe Landeskog, when he's here, draft pick. And then they've, so the cores of these teams are homegrown, drafted, developed superstars. And then both teams have just filled in so well around those cores. It is, I mean, what's happened at Ball Arena over the last 5 years for each team is a masterclass in team building that every team in both leagues should be looking at and saying, that's how you do it. Back to your comment earlier, Jared Bednar and the Tampa Bay Lightning's John Cooper are criminally underrated in terms of the fact that neither of them have ever won Coach of the Year. Because they're supposed to be elite. It's like, don't you think that's maybe a part of the coaching? Mm-hmm. That these teams just seem to be elite every year regardless of who's on the roster? Gosh, what's the consistent piece there? And it just blows my mind that neither of those guys have ever gotten any real love for Coach of the Year, despite probably being the two best coaches in the NHL year over year.
Yeah, and I think the ownership deserves some credit because I've been the first one for years to, I guess, put the ownership down every possible chance I've had. But these last 5 years, they've made it impossible.
Why? And I'm genuinely asking,
why did I put them down?
Yeah.
Well, because there was a while, especially if you look at the Avalanche, where it didn't look like they were really ever going to come back to any relevance, right? Mm-hmm. It looked like they were just comfortable throwing a team out there, and maybe they make the playoffs, maybe they don't. And then it was kind of during that same window, the Nuggets took a couple steps back after the Carmelo Anthony trade, and you're like, okay, great job, ownership. Thanks a lot for these two mediocre, maybe even less than mediocre teams. But then they got lucky with some draft spots. Mm-hmm. They executed those draft picks well, and now here we are and draw the parallel to Arizona with their current ownership debacle. it just makes you feel good about where we are.
Because the thing that I've always heard that I can't push back on too hard with Kroenke is that there's not a lot of extras for fans. There's not a lot of like great fan experience. It's all really good. You go to Ball Arena, you're gonna have a good time. It's all very nice. It's updated. It's clean. It's whatever. But the thing that I always go to is like they don't do season ticket boxes. There's a lot of other franchises that send jerseys and limited edition memorabilia and they make a big deal for their season ticket holders. And there's a lot of perks. The Avs don't do the Meet the Team event anymore. They used to have the one event. It was 2 hours long that season ticket holders could go to. And they'd stand in these long lines. They get to meet players and coaches and get autographs. They don't even do that anymore. It was one night. They don't do it. They don't send, little care packages to their season ticket holders. There's not a lot of extra frills. I get why people don't like that. You talk to anyone who runs the actual teams, they're like, we have the best owners in pro sports. They hire the right people. They give us the money we need, and they stay out of our way and let us do our jobs. And look at what it's getting you. I agree with you. I think it took a shift in mentality in the early 2010s for them to do that.
And a couple draft picks to fall in their lap, like I said.
Totally. I also do want to say, though, that like they had some draft picks fall in their lap, but the Avs deserve major credit for taking, at the time, a lot of people thought was a swing on a guy like Cale Makar after the season that they had just had.
Don't forget the Seth Jones-MacKinnon conversation.
I was going to touch on it. Don't worry. Seth Jones was considered to be the number one pick. The Avs were desperate for defensemen, and give Patrick Wallace credit, talked everyone into, no, this is the guy. He's the game breaker. He's the best player in this draft. And then Mikko Rantanen, that's a 10th overall pick. Like, you've got to feel comfortable in your pro scouting department, your European pro scouting department, that this is the right guy. They've hit on those draft picks for sure, but by the way, they fell to 4 for Cale Makar. Like, not only did they take him at 4, coming from a junior A league, but he was a top 4 pick already committed to college. Like, that took a lot of guts. And then for the Nuggets, Nikola Jokic was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial, famously. Like, they got a little lucky, but the Avs get a lot of shit for not developing talent. And I'm not even saying it's completely unwarranted. To me, that narrative is starting to run a little bit thin.
Well, I think you look at Mikko Rantanen specifically. If you remember, he spent that first year in San Antonio.
Rookie of the year in the AHL.
Exactly. So they were really developing him. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a, wow, 10th pick, let's put him right in the NHL. He's good. He's finished. I promise you he's going to do great. They had to develop him. They had to coach him up and get him to where he was finally NHL ready. Again, let's give Jared Bednar some credit. He had to continue to coach him up to get him where he is today.
100%.
He was very raw when he came out, right?
Right.
Like, he had talent, but he couldn't really skate all that well.
Well, you'd see him shoot the puck, and you were like, holy smokes. And then you'd see him do a bunch of other stuff. It was like, what am I looking at here? But Nathan MacKinnon, the strides that he's taken in Colorado. Again, Cale Makar, even his first year in college, it was like, that was pretty good. That wasn't great for a 4th overall pick. And the Avs really, were involved with his development at UMass. He's gotten to Colorado. Even as good as he was in that first playoff run when he showed up, just look at the player that he is now. Logan O'Connor is another player that they signed undrafted and have developed into a full-time NHLer. They took guys like Alexander Kerfoot, Tyson Jost, and flipped them for real valuable assets. Sam Malinsky, again, another guy they took out of college, undrafted, and it looks like you're staring down a full-time NHLer. Nikolai Kovalenko, drafted in the 6th round. Everyone's just chomping at the bit. I'm sure Evan's been at Family Sports since 9 a.m. this morning, waiting to see if Kovalenko is going to be joining the team. I get it. They haven't, they're not churning out guys from every draft every year. They are developing a lot of guys and getting legitimate NHL games and NHL assets out of these players that they are drafting, developing, signing as unrestricted or as undrafted, free agents. The development path within this organization is not what I think a lot of people make it out to be. And we're sitting in this window as a result of a lot of that development into elite talent.
Yeah, and like I kind of said a second ago, you look over at what's going on in Arizona, and it's the exact opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were never really able to build a contender or any team of real relevance since, the late 90s maybe?
They had that one team, I think it was in like 2013, that ran to the conference final, but they got swept. They were kind of like the 07 Rockies, where it was this really cool story. Mike Smith is in net, and then they got their heads kicked in.
Mm-hmm. Against the Red Wings?
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
No. Was it the Hawks? I think it was the Hawks. Or the Kings? It was the Kings. It was it was one of the years that the Kings won, and the Kings dummied them in the Western Conference Final. I feel bad for Arizona Coyotes fans. I know people want to dunk on
all 12 of them.
I see. But even if it's 12, I feel bad for those 12. You know, I was listening to great people down at PHNX Coyotes. I worked very closely with them before. Liam Merrill, Craig Morgan, Steve Peters, like they're outstanding people. Maybe some of the most like dialed in local reporters of any beat anywhere in the country. And like it's them that, you know, it's those people that I feel for through all of this. 'Cause yeah, you know, the team's going to move. It looks like it's not 100%. The ink's not dry, but it looks like the team's moving. They're going to go to Salt Lake. They're going to get a full rebrand, new logo, new jerseys, new arena, you know, a big proper pro arena. It's going to be really exciting and really invigorating for an entire new market. But there's a bunch of writers and team staff and stuff that are all about to be out of work because their team's about to just leave. And it's nothing that they did. It had nothing to do with how committed they were. And to me, that's the stuff that's a real bummer.
Sure, but I think you have to crack some eggs to make an omelet. That same thing happened in Quebec. And had that not happened, my life wouldn't be what it is today.
Totally.
Right? So
right. But again, all I'm saying is right. But all I'm saying is there was, and to your point, there's always they're never moving a successful franchise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're never moving a team that's like, well, they're winning, they're making money like crazy, the building's full every night, the ownership is rock solid. They just want to move like that. Like there's always a reason it's happening. But to your point, to this day, there is a large campus. The city of Quebec erected an entire arena just saying, please bring us back, bring us a team since you took one from us. We taxpayers, we agreed to build this arena for you. That's how desperate we are for it. All we want is what was taken from us 30 years ago. And so like it is, like you said, there is going to be a lot of new excitement and a lot of really great things with the NHL moving to this market that is rapidly growing, rapidly expanding, that you know, that there's going to be new interest in a brand new team and you know, new merch and new logos. Like that's all really exciting. That's all going to be good. That is going to be good for the league. You're going to be going from a building of 4,500 that's usually full on most nights to a building of 18,000 that you know at least for that first year is going to be packed. You've got Logan Cooley, you've got Clayton Keller. Not Shane Doan. What's the kid's name?
Josh
Doan. Thank you. Like you've got exciting pieces there. Matthias Michelli. Like that's going to be an exciting team in Salt Lake. Not unlike what happened with Quebec moving here, where suddenly you had Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg and Adam Foote suddenly just dropped into the lap of a new market. That's all going to be really exciting. I know the folks that are around the Arizona Coyotes and what I was going to say, and they talked about this. Frank Saravelli talked about this on the PHNX show yesterday. You know, man, the Coyotes fans that are their diehard fans, those are some of the most committed fans in hockey.
Yeah.
Like for as much as people want to dunk on Arizona Coyotes fans, the ones that are their core base, they don't get enough credit. That organization has never given them a thing to cheer for. Mm-hmm. The atmosphere in there is terrible on most nights. They got moved to an arena that seats 4,500 people.
And I know the arena they were in before, people didn't love its location.
Well, it would be like if they had it down, you know, in Parker.
Or maybe in Commerce City.
Right. Exactly. And so it's like there's been a billion obstacles that ownership and the league need to take some credit for. Billion obstacles put in front of fans in Arizona. Like it's been a market destined for failure because of the way that it's been mismanaged so many times. And there is still, it might be small, there's a core base of Arizona Coyotes fans that are the ones that are getting screwed over the absolute most for being among the most dedicated fans in all of hockey. For saying every year we show up, we buy the jerseys, we show up to games, we buy the merch, we drive 40 minutes out to Glendale to see them. We pack into this small arena to see them. The team has almost moved 5 different times. Every summer we got to go through this. And oh, by the way, through all of it, the team sucks. And there's still a core of fans that are there every night, and it's those people that I feel bad for.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, is that they were just never able to put together any teams that had any sort of relevance, really, for stretches at a time.
There is a thought process among some ownership groups. The best marketing is winning.
Yeah, it is.
And the Arizona Coyotes have never done that.
Right.
I do hope eventually the NHL can make its way back to Arizona for 2 reasons. One, it's the 4th largest sports market in the U.S. It is important for them to not have a team there, but to have a successful team there. And that's, I think, the difference right now. And 2, very selfishly, I'm pissed that 2 trips to Arizona got taken off the year in favor of 2 trips to Salt Lake.
Yeah, weather is certainly a factor. At least it's a shorter flight.
Shorter flight, and gosh, what sucks, dude, is that Avs Coyotes games, for as bad as the Yotes have been, there is some mean, nasty dislike there. And I was really, really hoping for the Arizona Coyotes to get good so that there could have been this fun Southwest rivalry between Colorado and Arizona. You know, half the year they're in the same time zone. And, you know, these could be like 2 teams that could just kind of go at it over and over. So I'm glad that they're not moving them to Houston, where suddenly it becomes Dallas and Houston. To me, Colorado, Salt Lake, now you've even got like the mountains and like...
Yeah, like the MLS, they have their own little trophy anytime Real Salt Lake plays the Rapids, and whoever wins the season series.
The NHL is not full of a bunch of losers like that who need in-season trophies. But yes, I love the idea, like the Ski Town Cup or something like that.
Hey, the more trophies, the better.
No! Someone's got a kid.
Are you kidding me? How many hundreds of trophies does the NHL give out?
They give out individual awards, but one team
trophy.
Of trophies. They give out one team trophy.
No.
Yes.
Presidents.
Those are more of like representative of where you finished. That's not like a...
You should get a trophy for winning a division. Even if it's just a smaller...
You get a banner.
Yeah, banner's not as cool as a trophy.
Yeah. I do like the way the NHL does it, though, that like the winner of the Western Conference isn't necessarily who finished first in the West.
You get a trophy there, too.
But that's only if you advance to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess when I think of like they awarded a trophy for beating that team, my brain always goes to the MLB where like they have champagne tarps in the locker room for making the wild card game, making the play-in game. I was like, oh, you could lose one game and your season's done and you're in here getting trashed off champagne.
Yeah, I think the MLS was just trying to take a little piece from college football, because you see that a lot in college football,
and I think
right?
It's so lame in college football. I'm just a bad person for this, maybe.
I'm not disagreeing. I think
but point being,
I like trophies.
I'm glad that if they do end up moving them, that they're going from Arizona to Salt Lake and not, because that's the one. My point with all that was the Arizona Coyotes are the one geographical natural rival for the Avs. Everyone else, like the Avs, if you go look at an NHL team map, like the Avs are out on an island. There are not a lot of teams that are close to them. I think Houston will eventually get a team, so that'll be, it'll be the Texas thing with them and the Stars. I want a team geographically close. 1, to make travel a little bit easier, and 2, for the Avs to have that natural rival that's right there.
Yeah, and for the organization's sake, I want them to have a little bit better ownership, and maybe somebody who invests in the team a little bit more.
Build a competitive team to build that rivalry. Because right now it's just, the games get kind of nasty, but at the end of the season, they don't really matter because the Yotes are a lottery team and the Avs are playing for Stanley Cups. Like, they're not meeting any. Like, imagine how fun the year that there was the hit on Girard, followed by that huge brawl, and then the next game was MacKinnon throwing the helmet at whatever his name, Connor Garland. Like, imagine that those teams would have gone 6 games that summer. Like, there'd been blood on the ice every night.
Was it the bubble where they played the Coyotes in the first round?
And that was fucking smoked up, bro.
It was a fun series.
It was fun.
I remember Kemper had a couple good games for the Coyotes.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I think you hit that on the head. There's a lot of perspective that you gave that I haven't even thought about as far as the rivalry and everything like that. But there's one thing we do know. We've heard Elliot Friedman all season long saying that the NHL's not going to give up on Arizona.
Yeah.
So I think, just take a break.
And truthfully, the idea of in 5-7 years having Colorado, Salt Lake, and Arizona, like, I love that. That's again, like, that's your own little, the 3 teams can, that becomes its own little California gauntlet that teams have to do.
Imagine how nuts St. Louis would go if a football team called the St. Louis Rams showed back up in St. Louis, right? Mm-hmm. I think the hype over the next 5-7 years of, hey, they're going to come back can really benefit the city.
Well, and from what it sounds like, the league is kind of telling them, and again, I'm basing this off of other reports that I've heard from people. I haven't been told anything that I'm not tied in anything Arizona Coyotes. But it's more of like, hey, you guys are saying that you're going to do a lot of things with this franchise. So we're going to take the franchise, we're going to put it somewhere else where all that's already happening. Now go do it, and we'll give you a franchise. Stop saying you're going to with a current team. Go do it. Go get the land. Go build the building. Get the entertainment district built around it, and we will bring a team back. And I'm with you. They should, if this ends up being what happens, whoever that ownership group is needs to take a step back and say, whew, that sucked. We just did a massive disservice to an entire large market of fans, of, staff, media, whatever. We're now going to take the next 7 years and build the hype, and we are going to bring a team back, fresh branding, fresh colors, fresh arena, and we are going to do this correctly the second time we get a chance. We're not going to mess this up again. I look at the Winnipeg Jets. There is already teeny murmurs of, are they going to have to move this team in a few years? Financially, they're not doing well. They have the smallest building outside of Mullet in the arena, in the league, and they're not filling it every night. You cannot run a franchise that failed. You can't run it back the exact same way. The Winnipeg Jets brought that team back with a 15,000 person arena and went with the same name, same colors, same everything, and it just feels like it immediately went stale.
Do you think Salt Lake City's looking for a baseball team? I know one they can have.
Don't even have to change the name.
Did you get everything off your chest on that?
Well, the thing that we haven't mentioned with all of it is there's already rumors out there that if they do that, they would move Edmonton and Calgary to the Central and Colorado and Salt Lake to the Pacific.
Yeah, I don't see how that makes any sense. Why even change anything at all?
What would make me... What time zone is Salt Lake? Do we know?
Probably Mountain, right? Yeah, I think they're Mountain from when the Nuggets play the Jazz. They're always at 7 o'clock. Ask Siri.
Oh, actually, I think I looked it up already. Yeah, so they are in the Mountain time zone. What would be so infuriating about if they did that was you'd have 2 Mountain time zone teams and be moving them out of the Central and moving into the other 2 Mountain time zone teams. There's 4 teams in the NHL if Salt Lake ends up being a thing. Ugh. There's 4 teams in the NHL that play in this time zone, and they will have them split in 2 different divisions, and we will end up in the one that will be 8 p.m. starts 3 nights a week.
No, bringing this back full circle.
Right.
Keep those 8 o'clock starts away from us. Get out of here.
Dude, seriously.
Can somebody ask our opinion on any of this, please?
Well, I was going to say, the people that are in the market that are at the games every single night, and truthfully, if they wanted to do something like that, like you need to take this opportunity to get your 4 Mountain Time Zone teams in the same division.
Would make sense to me.
Right. And now, I don't know. You can't really move Dallas. I get it. I get you'd kind of have to do some juggling, but to me, I don't know. I really hope
they get it right, but I'm not confident they will.
And truthfully, they could probably even stand to do a larger realignment. Nashville being in the Central Division, I find weird. Like there's just there's some kind of refinagling I think you could do in a couple different places without looking at it straight away. Like I think there's stuff you could do. I do think the Pacific time zone thing makes it difficult because you can't put Dallas there, you can't put Winnipeg there. I don't know, but yeah. It sucks that you're like, oh, we can't break up the Central time zone teams. Oh, we can't break up the Pacific time zone teams. I guess these assholes in the middle are going to get screwed. And so it sucks.
Speaking of assholes, did you see Eric Johnson throw a headset on the ice?
Well, he didn't throw it. It got stuck to him.
Looked like he threw it.
Was there anything else that funny happened this week? I don't think so.
All right. Well, it was a good show. It's good to have you back. You had a lot of ammo in you and carried the podcast, so thank you. But as I said, next week will be our last regular season podcast. We're really winding down. And
then we will be going to post-game pods after all playoff games. I believe that night, if not coming out first thing the next morning. But so you will be seeing much more of our faces here come playoff time.
Indeed.
Staying on top of everything. So in addition to our regular weekly Friday shows, we will be giving you guys more content. Not full-blown pods after every game, but definitely making sure we're unpacking everything that's going on. We'll have live shows, live short kind of check-in shows most days. We got a lot of fun stuff planned here for the playoffs ramping up, so make sure you guys are subscribing here. Head on over to wherever you get your audio-only podcasts as well. If you're watching the video pod right now, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts, make sure to go subscribe there, as well as to our other show, This Is Fun. We had Avalanche in-arena host Rachel Toss on this week. We had Megan Angley of DNVR on the week before. D-Mac from Altitude, Connor McGahee, voice of the Colorado Avalanche, all have been on This Is Fun. That is listed as a separate show, though, so make sure you're subscribing to both of those. It's only more fun guests and better conversation and playoffs and all kinds of fun stuff coming. So make sure you're liking, subscribing, all the stuff that we're supposed to ask you to do. Hit the bell. I don't know. What else do they normally ask on YouTube videos? Is that all of them?
I think so. Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Get your friends to subscribe.
I always just say, tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your mom's friends, tell your friends' moms.
Tell your friends.
Tell everybody.
And tell them to tell their friends.
Yes, exactly.
And, yeah.
Yeah, the weather is beautiful.
Dude, oh my gosh.
NHL playoffs are right around the corner. This is the time of year that we all love.
I was going to start doing that too.
Ooh. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys.
Bye.